Before you lift a finger in the morning, News Radio AM 650 WSN is already in action. Staying on the ball is how we keep you on the ball. Hear your news around town and around the world. We help you weather the day, settle all scores, stretch your dollar, and even tell you the best way to get to work and back. We're the one to depend on in the morning and all day long. And all you have to do is turn us on. News Radio AM 650 WSN. Depend on it.
Metro school bus drivers, are they driving on the...
You signed it. That's correct. What do you think that was going to happen to you? You've now signed, I, Arnold Bracy, committed treason against the United States of America, in effect.
That's correct. But
what do you think was going to happen?
as I said, the things that they put in that statement that they accuse me of doing, I know never happened. It's like someone saying, sign this statement saying you're Peter Pan.
You know, they're not accusing you of being Peter Pan.
Exactly. Being accused of Peter Pan is ludicrous, exactly like that statement is. It's just crazy. There's no way those things in that statement could have happened.
We have two closely spaced exit wounds of the skull back here.
Dr. Clyde Snow is an American forensic anthropologist. He is much in demand by police forces all over the United States. Clyde Snow solves murder. What he's found in the Buenos Aires morgue and in the unofficial cemeteries of Argentina is the evidence of mass murder.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 people were put in here during the years that this was operating as a dumping ground.
The owner of Raj Realty is Chandra Dwivedi.
They were directing whites, steering whites to areas that were predominantly white because those people were white. And they were steering blacks to areas that were either black or changing. If you can change a whole neighborhood, you get the sale of the house when the white person runs and the black person buys, and usually you get the white person when they move to another place.
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer.
I'm Harry Reasoner.
I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Diane Sawyer. Those stories and Andy Rooney tonight on 60 Minutes.
Mercedes-Benz was obsessed with safety engineering long before it became fashionable. Perhaps that's why, in a recent insurance industry study of 207 cars, this S-Class Mercedes had the best overall safety record. Mercedes-Benz, engineered like no other car in the world.
Frank, your outline's due tomorrow. Frank, your report's due tomorrow. Frank, your presentation's due tomorrow.
With all the problems you face at work, your office equipment shouldn't be one of them.
Hop on it.
Rico, we don't let your office get in the way of your business.
Pepper's Farm distinctive cookies. Everybody thinks their favorite is the best. They're right.
2 years ago, after 3 days of intensive interrogation by agents of the NIS, the U.S. Naval Investigative Service, Marine Corporal Arnold Bracy confessed to espionage for the Soviets against the United States. It made headlines nationwide. Bracy confessed that he had had sexual relations with a Soviet young woman who had worked at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, where he was a Marine security guard. And because that affair had compromised him, the story went, he had been persuaded by the KGB to permit Soviet agents to enter some of the most sensitive areas of the U.S. Embassy at night, where they had been able to place bugs on top-secret communications equipment. He had done huge damage to his nation and to the reputation of the U.S. Marine Corps. But then, within just an hour of signing the 6-page typewritten confession, Bracy suddenly recanted, said it was all untrue, said he had been psychologically harassed, mentally bludgeoned into making a false confession. And with nothing else to go on except this confession, Bracy went free.
You signed it. That's correct.
What do you think that was going to happen to you? You've now signed, I, Arnold Bracy, committed treason against the United States of America, in effect.
That's correct. But
what do you think was going to happen?
as I said, the things that they put in that statement that they accuse me of doing, I know never happened.
I know it couldn't have happened. It was impossible the way it was set up.
Why sign it? I know about psychological pressure. I can understand.
It's like someone saying, sign this statement saying you're Peter Pan.
You know, they're not accusing you of being Peter Pan.
Exactly, but it's so, because that being accused of Peter Pan is ludicrous, exactly like that statement is. It's just crazy. There's no way those things in that statement could have happened. So you think, well, if these guys are going to get off my back for my signature on something that's so crazy, you're disoriented, and the statement gets signed. But then once the pressure's off and you can sit back and realize what happened, say, these guys are criminals. They don't care what's going on. They don't care about the truth.
One of the investigators he's talking about is Jim Pender, a Naval Investigative Service agent for 25 years who conducted the interrogation of Arnold Bracy.
At the conclusion of that statement, I discussed with Bracy. I said, Bracy, you know, now it's time to swear what you've told us. And I asked him specifically, listen, Bracy, do you believe in God? Are you willing to swear that this is a truthful statement? And he said, yes, I do. Do you understand how serious this is? He said, yes, I do. Now listen, Bracy, you understand what you've told us is espionage, don't you? And Bracy then said, he began to think, this is espionage. He said, well, yeah, it's espionage. And I understand I did it. And then we said, okay, now, are you willing to swear that this is the truthful statement? And he said, yes, I am. So I said, please raise your right hand. And he did. And he said, and I said to him, do you solemnly swear the statement you've given me here today is the truth to the best of your knowledge and belief, so help you God? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, okay, then sign it. And he signed it.
They did not have me raise my hand and swear to any of those statements. They did not do that. These statements were recanted at the instant that I realized when that NIS agent said, well, we know none of this stuff is true, and we just got you to sign it.
But Aldridge, though he was not in the room when Bracy confessed, was second in command of the Naval Investigative Task Force that conducted the Marine Security Guard spy investigation. Is there any doubt in your mind that Arnold Bracy was indeed an agent of the Soviet Union?
Based on the investigative material that I have reviewed, I believe that Arnold Bracy committed espionage while in Moscow.
Arnold Bracy's misadventures began in December of 1986 when another Moscow Marine, Sergeant Clayton Lonetree, confessed to his sexual involvement with a KGB female agent named Violetta. Lonetree acknowledged that he gave away secrets, and eventually he was sentenced to 30 years. And the NIS, which was assigned the task of conducting the investigation, assumed that if there was one Marine involved in espionage in Moscow, there had to be others. And so began one of the most extensive espionage inquiries in U.S. history. Over 1,800 people were interviewed worldwide by the NIS. While Bracy was a Marine guard here in Moscow, he, like Clayton Lonetree before him, became involved with a young Soviet woman, a U.S. Embassy cook named Galya. Did you ever sleep with Galya?
No, I did not.
You confessed to sleeping with her?
Yeah, well, that confess is a funny word. You know, confess is when you admit to something that you did wrong.
And why did you say that you had if you hadn't?
I was placed on the polygraph. And they asked me, did I have any sex with any foreign nationals? I told them, no, I didn't. They put me on the polygraph, and then all of a sudden, the NIS said, our polygraphs say you're having problems with this sexual situation. We feel, based on these polygraph results, you had sex with a Soviet national. Now, they said, well, having sex with a Russian national isn't against the law or anything like that. We're your buddies. You can tell us you guys were young. You won't get in any trouble for it if you admit it.
You confessed to having sex with Galya just because they, in effect, persuaded you that it was unimportant.
That's correct.
It's my feeling Bracy has been a liar all his life, and quite a successful one. Very, very sophisticated. And what he's saying there is a lie also. Nobody threatened him. In my opinion, these young Marines were nothing more than hormones with legs over there.
As we reported, within just an hour of signing his confession, Arnold Bracy recanted. The NIS case against him fell apart. And rather than risk jeopardizing a possible future action against Bracy, the NIS decided to drop its case.
The military rules of evidence require that every essential element of a confession be corroborated.
And you didn't have corroboration?
And we didn't have a corroboration.
The NIS thought the corroboration of Bracy's spy activity would come from Clayton Lonetree, but Lonetree never implicated Bracy. So the NIS came up with a new theory, indeed a new suspect to begin to make a case on. According to the Naval Investigative Service, there was a U.S. Marine who was Arnold Bracy's KGB control agent in Moscow, Robert Stuffelby. He was a staff sergeant, and like Bracy and Clayton Lonetree, he too was a Marine security guard in the Moscow embassy between 1985 and 86.
I don't care what the NIS believes. I would trust Bracy with my life, and there aren't too many people in the world that I would say that about.
You know what the NIS thinks about you.
Yes, I do.
You know that they still think that you were the spy master, Bracy's spy master.
It doesn't matter how you can logically refute anything that they can come up with. They've invested too much of their own resources into this big sex for secret spy scandal. It would be the ultimate embarrassment for them to admit that it never existed.
The NIS began to make a spy case against Stufflebeam based entirely on circumstantial information. Stufflebeam, they say, registered deceptive on several lie detector tests. While he was a security guard in Moscow, he had a mysterious Russian language teacher, they say, who had also taught Clayton Lonetree. And when his room was searched, he had what the NIS believed to be, quote, communist literature there. Failing to make an espionage case that could hold up in court, the NIS eventually brought charges of fraternization against Stufflebeam for having sex with Soviet women. He was reduced in rank and received an honorable discharge.
I signed the statement saying that the women were Russian. Major stupid attack on my part, but this was after 3 days of interrogation and listening to these people tell me I was a spy. I'd had enough.
Two other Marines, Robert Williams and Vincent Downs, who served with Bracy in Moscow, told the NIS that Bracy had admitted to them that he let KGB agents roam through the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. Downs said in a statement, Bracy said he had met with Gallia and a colonel in the KGB in an apartment in Moscow. Bracy also said that he was asked by the Soviets to let them into the U.S. Embassy, and that he let them in the embassy and they were allowed to walk around. Williams made a similar admission to the NIS. But later, just like Bracy, both these Marines recanted their statements, claiming that NIS agents had coerced them. Why would Williams lie? Why would Downs lie?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure, certainly. Mike, I'm a former Marine. There's a psychological bonding that occurs when you go in the Marine Corps. It's akin to biological bonding. Words like Semper Fi, always faithful, band of brothers, once a Marine, always a Marine, one for all and all for one, those aren't shallow cliches to Marine Corps personnel. They have meaning.
But you mean to say that Marines would bond on something like that if they believed that one of their number was a spy against the United States and for the Soviet Union?
I'm saying we're talking about a close-knit group of Marines at the time who bonded together, and that had impact. And we're not talking about all the Marines there. We're only talking about a few that had knowledge.
This is a worldwide thing. It's in the newspapers all over the world. And these guys are boiling down to the Marines' word against these agents' word. Nobody took our word on anything. No one said anything.
Who is telling the truth in this whole affair? According to Ron Kessler, it is Arnold Bracy who is lying. Kessler is a former Washington Post investigative reporter who has written a new book on the case. He interviewed hundreds of people associated with the spy scandal at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow, and he has come up with a startling revelation that Soviet bugging devices had been found inside the embassy's CPU, the communications room in Moscow. Bugs that were secretly in place in machines like these, while the U.S. was conducting highly secret arms reduction talks with the Soviets. A fact the CIA has covered up until now. According to Kessler, before Bracy arrived in Moscow, there were others who let the Soviets into the CPU, and when Bracy became a spy, he simply continued to give them access. You say that the security of the embassy was breached, that bugs were placed inside the CPU. And this is the first time, if this is true, first time this has ever been revealed.
That's right. There have been no allegations even to that effect. My sources on this are so good that the people who actually have been involved in doing this, in finding the bugs, in reporting it, and investigating the whole thing.
And you think that Bracy is part of this conspiracy, if you want to call it?
There's no question in my mind.
It is in the CPU that the CIA's cipher machines are kept, and it is through these machines that flow the top secret details of CIA operations against the Soviet Union, results of eavesdropping on Kremlin communications, instructions from the Secretary of State to the ambassador, And if the Soviets had indeed gotten access into the communications room inside the embassy to the CPU, they would have struck gold. But Arnold Bracy says that he himself could not get into the CPU. And you could not get into that CPU.
That's correct. It was not possible for a U.S. Marine or anybody not authorized to be in the CPU. If someone was in that CPU, it wasn't because a Marine let him in.
But Kessler says that's just not true.
Did a Marine have access to the CPU?
Yes, a Marine had access through codes.
And Kessler says his sources tell him there is no doubt the CPU at the Moscow embassy was compromised by KGB agents who got inside.
You're absolutely satisfied of that?
No question.
You have gotten, without telling us from whom you've gotten it, you've gotten the assurance that you are on safe ground on making that allegation.
Very safe ground.
And Kessler reports that because of the bugging by the Soviets, 25 Soviet citizens who worked for the CIA were exposed and later executed.
And you lay the execution of those 25 directly at the feet of Arnold Bracy.
Bracy and possibly others who might have let them in. That's right.
This thing happens, they tried to blame the Marines for these people dying. They've tried to blame the Marines for the bugs in the new embassy. Anything that happened at that time, they pinned it all on the Marines.
The NIS interviewed, I don't know, 1,500, 1,800 people worldwide. They couldn't make a case against Bracy. Here's Ron Kessler all by himself making a case against Arnold Bracy. I mean, it's a brutal indictment that you're making.
Well, the NIS, unfortunately, doesn't know how to do an espionage investigation, and they totally screwed up the way they investigated Bracy.
But Ronald Kessler, all by himself, was able to do that.
Well, I had a lot of experience.
You are judge and jury.
That is the way journalism works.
They must have had every NIS agent in the world on this case. They've combed this case for almost 2 years now. People are saying, we think you're guilty. You know, I'll probably have to live with it till the day I die.
Arnold Bracy has his conscience to live with, as do the other Marines who might have acted in a cover-up capacity for Arnold Bracy. And he has to live with himself, look himself in the mirror every morning. But maybe the final chapter hasn't been written on Arnold Bracy. Maybe someday some member of the second chief directorate of the KGB in Moscow might come out, and maybe when he comes, he'll be carrying that smoking gun. I don't know. Right now, from the information that I have, and I've been privy to, and I've been away from it for a year, there is not sufficient information on which to convict Arnold Bracy or even take him to trial.
And where is Arnold Bracy today? Until 2 weeks ago, he worked as a security guard at a computer company that sells and installs computer systems in the Pentagon and other government agencies. Bracy's job was to make sure that unauthorized persons didn't get near those sensitive computers. When the NIS learned about his job, they told the FBI, and Bracy was transferred to a different position.
Most folks feel cheated when their cereal turns mushy and milky. Crispix is toasted crisp with a special shape that keeps it crispy. In fact, we'll take a break and then you can see for yourself. You guys can watch too.
The BMW 7 Series. It brings new blood to a class of automobile that can certainly benefit from it.
So where you from?
Warsaw.
Huh? Hey, I got an uncle from there. Or was it Krakow?
Warsaw is a famous name in business insurance.
Hey, maybe you know him. Paul Zakowski.
Sorry.
But some people have trouble placing us.
Where's Warsaw?
Wisconsin.
Oh, welcome to America.
Oh, Warsaw Insurance.
That's Warsaw.
W-A-U-S-A-U.
Right.
Warsaw.
We're the business insurance experts from Warsaw.
Whatever.
Okay, let's see how it held up. Denise?
Crunchy. Really tasty.
Well, there you have it. Okay, everyone, get out your spoons. Crispix. Crisp that just won't quit.
A new case brings Jessica to the doctor.
Now, open wide.
The symptoms? deadly.
Oh, are you sure?
The diagnosis.
What are you doing down here?
Murder, she wrote. Then, fantasy turns into deadly reality. Sharon Gless.
I know what I want.
Scott Glenn, inspired by actual events. Outside Woman, tonight.
There's romance on Murphy Brown.
It's called dating, Frank.
It's called Another Fix-Up.
Just don't say he looks like Don Knotts. He hates that. Not the guy whose underwear sticks out of his pants.
Monday.
From 1976 to 1982, a generation was lost in Argentina. The military regime declared a brutal war on anyone whose political views it found suspect, anyone it didn't like. It wasn't open war, it was unofficial war. It became known as the Dirty War. If you were one of those unlucky enough to be labeled a subversive or you just happened to be in the wrong place, you simply disappeared without trace. It happened to thousands of Argentines, a lost legion of youth known simply as the disappeared. To all but their families, it was as if the disappeared had never been born, non-persons. 6 years ago, with the return of democracy, the truth began filtering out, the truth of what happened to not one, but to 2 generations.
We have 2 closely spaced exit wounds of the skull back here. The entrance was probably down. The bullets were entering in this direction. You can see the destruction of the base of the skull here and exiting out here.
Dr. Clyde Snow is an American forensic anthropologist. He is much in demand by police forces all over the United States. Clyde Snow solves murder. What he's found in the Buenos Aires morgue and in the unofficial cemeteries of Argentina is the evidence of mass murder.
Around 20 of these holes were dug during the 2.5 years that this was used. Our total estimate at this time is somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 people were put in here during the years that this was operating as a dumping ground.
Snow has spent 2 of the last 4 years in Argentina. His assistants are a team of young Argentines who use the skills of archaeology. They're not looking for the secrets of ancient civilization. They are uncovering the sins of yesterday. Behind the wall of an official cemetery is this unofficial cemetery, this relic of the military's own little version of a final solution. Clyde Snow is interested in the why, but even more interested in the who.
So every tooth, every bone is very precious in terms of its potential value as evidence. A single tooth, in some cases, might be enough to get a positive identification.
The bones tell other stories as well. Tales of the torture that went on in police stations and military bases all across the country. Tales of slow, painful death and of the final gunshot to the head. In some cases, they also speak of life. This was someone's daughter, someone's mother. It is known that among the disappeared, there were several hundred young women who were pregnant. It's also known that in most cases, their babies were delivered in prison by doctors. Of the 340 secret detention centers, this one, the Banfield Police Station, was among the most notorious. For many young women, this was the last stop. Their babies were kept or sold or awarded to childless military couples or put up for adoption. Their mothers were murdered, their bodies discarded.
This is a female. She has a single exit wound. Probably she was shot from in this direction. We're talking about a young woman here. We can determine from the configuration of the pelvis that this is a female skeleton. This very deep indentation and irregular indentation here is what we call a pre-auricular sulcus. And it's just a deep groove, and when that is present, we can say with a great deal of confidence that this woman gave birth to a term or near-term child sometime before death.
Those pelvic indentations are signs of life. Somewhere there are the children. In Buenos Aires' Plaza de Mayo, the mothers of those women and the grandmothers of those children gather each Thursday and toll off the names of the disappeared, demanding to know more about their dead children.
The children have been completely hidden away by the kidnappers. Their names have been changed. Their whole identity is constructed, and so we have really to use our imagination to figure out how to find them.
Chicha Mariani and Estela Carlota do more than march. They run an organization called the Abuelas, grandmothers in search of missing grandchildren. Using anonymous tips and information dug up by Clyde Snow's team, they search records, try to spot phony birth certificates. They've even gone undercover. One took a job as a maid in the house of a family suspected of taking a child. The Abuelas were able to unite the child with the real grandmother. So far, they've found 48 children. Maria Victoria, now aged 10, is one of them. She was probably born in Banfield Police Station. Her parents were taken there in 1977 and never seen again. The Abuelas received a tip that a child was living with relatives of a prison director. They investigated and found the birth certificate to be a phony. Maria Victoria now lives with her real grandmother. The organization knows of over 200 other children, most born in detention centers, others kidnapped as infants when their parents were seized. Their photographs cover a wall. Finding a child is one thing. Proving in court who that child really is can be even more difficult. Only science could do that, and the Abuelas approached a leading American genetics expert, Professor Mary Claire King of the University of California. Could some kind of test be developed to prove grandparentage?
We match the genes. We take a blood sample from the child who may be a kidnapped victim, and a blood sample from any of the grandparents who are looking for a child who are still alive, and from any of the aunts and uncles that are still alive, that is, the brothers and sisters of the parents who are dead. And we match up their genes. It's as simple as that.
How foolproof is it?
It's totally foolproof if you keep going. In other words, if the child does not fit into this family, very quickly we'll have a case where the child's genes do not match to the genes of the grandparents and the aunts or uncles. If the child does belong in the family, the child will match and match and match and match.
So can you say 99.9999?
You can add as many nines as you like because I can keep going as long as you like.
It's that good.
It's that good.
So good that when Argentine courts ordered suspected families to submit to blood testing, some fled the country. The case of Major Norberto Bianco, a military doctor. The Abuelas believe he delivered a number of prisoners' babies, and they suspect that 2 of them, a boy and a girl, he kept for himself. Bianco took his wife and the children to Paraguay. Argentina is seeking his extradition. The children regard the Biancos as loving parents. But back in Argentina, a grandmother is waiting. Matilda Herrera may be that grandmother.
I lost my daughter, her husband, my 2 sons, their wives, and my daughter and my daughter-in-law were pregnant.
Matilda Herrera has spent 10 years trying to trace the fate of her pregnant daughter and daughter-in-law and their babies.
They keep the mothers till the baby's born, and after they steal the babies.
There are indications that her missing daughter may be the real mother of one of the Bianco children.
Major Bianco was a doctor in Campo de Mayo's hospital, and we know that he had the decision of the future of the babies.
Dr. King's test clinched the case of Carlita and her grandmother, Matilda Companys. The little girl had spent most of her life as the daughter of a family named Rufo. Mrs. Companys' daughter and son-in-law and their infant child were kidnapped in 1976. The couple disappeared, but the grandmother learned from other prisoners that her daughter had scrawled the name Carlita in blood on a prison wall before she was murdered. an indication that her granddaughter was still alive. Today they live in Spain, still frightened that the man who claimed to be Carlita's father, Eduardo Rufo, the notorious leader of one of the death squads, may seek revenge. The Argentine government has established a national genetic data bank at the Durand Hospital in Buenos Aires. Family members of missing children have blood samples taken and filed against the day when a child might be found. So even when the abuelas are gone, their blood, their genes, will continue to speak out. The genetic testing may be foolproof, final proof of a child's blood ties. It ties together the physical relationships in an elegant scientific formula. But science or law or politics or religion or journalism has yet to find a way of explaining what happened in a place like this, or a way of telling a child that the people he thinks are his parents may have been part of a conspiracy to murder the people who really were his parents.
Qué pregunta, eh?
What a question.
Danielle Piotti is one of the judges who handles the cases of the children of the disappeared.
This is a situation which has no precedent. From what I've been able to find out, there has never been a situation like this anywhere else in the world.
Judge Piotti must not only rule on who keeps the child, but must also tell the child the brutal truth.
It is, without doubt, a most difficult task. There are those who believe it is best to spare the child the truth because of the shock. But taking into account what happened in Argentina, we don't even know how big this problem is. I think it is important to reveal to these children their true identities.
The truth is going to come out. In one case that was very dramatic, the child learned that she was a kidnapped victim when she heard the woman she believed to be her mother scream at the man she believed to be her father. First you murdered this brat's mother, and now you expect me to raise her. I had it, I don't want her anymore. The girl was 12.
Is it important that these children know the truth, do you think?
Yes, I think that is very important. And it's important that the children who were born in prison know the truth about her family. That is very, very important.
In some cases, children were adopted in good faith. Tatiana and Mara were adopted in 1978 by the Svilagoy family. The couple was on an official list for adoption and were called to a hospital one day to take the infant daughters. Both children were very ill, and one theory is that the abductors probably abandoned them. After the dirty war, the Svilagoys, concerned that the children may have been abducted, came forward. 2 grandparents were found, both of them quite old. All agreed the best possible life for the children was with their adoptive family. But even in the best cases, these children will bear a heavy burden all their lives. In some cases, they are taken from families who may or may not know the truth and sent to live with one old woman who may die while the child is still an adolescent. It's as if the children are victimized over and over again. Generation after generation, there's some kind of scar. The field hands, the people who dig up the bones with such care and precision, are all young graduate students who only a few years ago might themselves have been among the disappeared.
It's very difficult. Sometimes you just got to keep your tears down, or as Clyde says, crying should be left for the night. During daytime, you're scientists.
We didn't know what we were going to find. We didn't know how we were going to feel about that, if we could do that work or not. We were really afraid, really for different things, because of world democracy was just starting here. So we were afraid of being a mark, if you want to put it that way. And also...
and if the military came back, you would be...
Of course, we would be...
first on the list.
Well, at least on the list, for sure.
Have you been here when a relative has come in who wanted to see these bones?
Yeah, in many cases. In many cases. And it's very hard to deal with that.
When the bones of a young woman named Liliana Pereira were identified by Clyde Snow, her mother insisted on seeing the remains.
We laid them out on white sheets. She went in and she spent a few minutes and touching the bones. And it was a very important thing for her because she finally had something of her daughter, Liliana, that she could say, you know, perhaps it is all over now, the waiting is over, and we can go on with our lives.
In the Plaza de Mayo, the mothers and grandmothers keep their weekly vigil. To many of their countrymen, it is taking on an antique quality, the relic of a time that many Argentinians would just as soon forget. But they will not let them. There are too many questions that remain unanswered. The names of all the murderers, the graves of all the disappeared, and the fate of the children. The children who did not disappear, but who are invisible.
There are a million reasons to drive a Nissan Sentra, and everyone is different.
First time that I saw you, I knew it was meant to be. Every day together, you keep pleasing me. You got the way to move me, yeah. You got the way.
The Nissan Sentra, the inexpensive car people drive because they want to.
No bull. No bull. Bull, Worldwide Information Systems. "60 Minutes, a CBS News weekly magazine, will continue.
Merv Griffin?
Will high society accept Newhart?
Kip and Anastasia DuPont. You mean the DuPonts? I have your carpet in my bedroom.
Monday.
The injustice, the anger, the fears, and the men who've seen too much.
You're gonna have to be brave here, Cat.
But through the madness, some things keep getting hotter. Tour of Duty Tuesday.
This is CBS.
Working hands, helping hands, hands that got a boogie on. And dollars our hands are busy too, making bacon breakfast for you. It's a good time, great things, breakfast in the morning blaze. The good time, great taste of McDonald's.
Right now, you can get McDonald's new steak biscuit for just 59 cents at participating McDonald's. Lean tender beef buttermilk biscuit, 59 cents. Wow.
Listen to the scissors, turn it all around. Don't you love the sound of a price coming down? Kroger scissors are on patrol, keeping prices under control. Don't you love the sound of a price coming down?
An unusual rape case has developed. A report at 10. Bellwood, Illinois was a virtually all-white American suburb that, to its credit, didn't want to be that way, and initially welcomed what it thought would be a slow and gradual influx of black families. But the town fathers awoke one morning to find that while neighboring communities were remaining predominantly white, their community was fast becoming predominantly black. Officials of this suburb of Chicago suspected unscrupulous real estate brokers were practicing racial steering, the illegal tactic of steering black and white customers to different neighborhoods because of race. To find out if what they suspected was true, Bellwood enlisted the help of the Leadership Council for Metropolitan Open Communities, a Chicago-based fair housing group, to conduct an undercover investigation. The Leadership Council sent out testers, teams of whites and teams of blacks, posing as husbands and wives looking for a home.
We call, we make an appointment with the realtor and say that we're interested in buying our first home at a certain price range. And we set up an appointment with that person to look at homes to buy.
So you went and you had a partner, a husband,
Right.
who was white.
Mm-hmm.
And
then I went out, and my partner, of course, was black.
And you both went to the same realtor?
Yes, within a certain amount of time. That was important, too.
The tests were arranged so that a white couple visited the realty office first, closely followed by a black couple with a comparable financial profile. The couples were told to ask for similar types of homes, but not to be too detailed in their requests.
Sometimes there's specifics in terms of how many bedrooms you want in a house, but you don't get specific enough so that the agent cannot show you certain things. You leave things pretty open.
The testers investigated 13 real estate firms. Based on the evidence gathered, Bellwood sued 4 realtors for racial steering. The case against Rod's Realty was the first to go to trial. Bill Caruso represented the village of Bellwood. What precisely was your charge in the suit against Rod's Realty?
There were really 2 things. Number 1 was that they were directing whites, steering whites to areas that were predominantly white because those people were white. And they were steering blacks to areas that were either black or changing because those people were black. The other thing that they were doing was they were giving false information. So they were telling whites, in other words, different things than blacks.
What do they gain by steering?
They make money by steering. If you can change a whole neighborhood or change a whole municipality of 20,000 people like Bellwood, that means you get the listing, you get the sale of the house when the white person runs and the black person buys, and usually you get the white person when they move to another place.
The owner of Rod's Realty is Chandra Dwivedi. Were you, in fact, steering blacks and whites to different neighborhoods?
No. No, not at all.
Were you telling whites that certain homes were on the market in certain communities and telling blacks that those homes were not available, that you were giving false information?
No, not at all.
From your experience in this country, why do you think so many people live in separate neighborhoods?
Perhaps they want to live with their own people. Whites want to live with whites and blacks want to live with blacks. And due to their ethnic background, they want to have their own, culture together. And that's why they tend to live separately.
Do you think that the people in the real estate business have any influence over where people live?
Not really.
Not at all?
No.
But when the case went to trial in U.S. District Court in Chicago in early 1987, Bellwood presented evidence gathered by the testers over an 11-month period that showed blacks and whites were steered to different neighborhoods. That's what happened to Charlene Canali and David Whitaker when they went to Rod's Realty in 1985. You and your husband told him that you were interested in homes in Bellwood?
Yeah, I had asked, I said, well, how about some houses? I'd like to see some houses in Bellwood. And he said, you would probably prefer houses in Berkeley.
Berkeley is one of those predominantly white communities, and Charlene Canali saw 2 houses there on her visit to Rod's Realty. When David Whitaker and his partner called, they didn't identify themselves as black, and the agent at Rod's Realty made an appointment to show them some houses.
However, when we got there, the agent gave us a number of excuses and reasons why we couldn't see homes that evening. He mentioned everything from folks are having dinner this hour till it's too late, things like I need more information, but he just simply refused to take us out to see any homes at all.
What the agent did was suggest that Whitaker drive by several houses in Bellwood and 3 predominantly white communities nearby, see which homes he liked, and make an appointment to see the inside on another day. And of these communities, the agent recommended Bellwood.
He built Bellwood up. He went on and on about how nice a community Bellwood is and that the schools were outstanding. The community life is just, there's nothing like it. And that is really the great community, the place we should be.
Stanley Dembowski heard a different story.
He had made some references to certain parts of Bellwood not being very desirable, and that people of our qualifications and our professionalism also live in Westchester and Hillside.
But for Mary Sadler, it was back to Bellwood.
We were told that Bellwood was a wonderful place to live and that Mr. Dwivedi lived there, he and his family, and that our children would be comfortable in the schools because it was so integrated, and it was just a great place. He had only good things to say about Bellwood.
One of the homes Stanley Dembowski was shown had the features Mary Sadler was looking for and was in her price range, but she never got to see it. It was in a white neighborhood. She also could have afforded this house in a white neighborhood, but she wasn't shown this home either. Stanley Dembowski was. Stanley Dembowski, you told him that there were certain parts of Bellwood that weren't very nice, according to him, and that he and his partner would be more comfortable in Westchester and Berkeley. Why?
No. I can never say these things to anybody, no.
So?
That is a lie.
That is a lie?
Right.
You've never directed someone towards a particular town?
No.
And if someone says that you have?
That's a lie.
Most real estate brokers use a multiple listing directory which lists almost all of the homes for sale in their area. This one, for example, lists about 300 houses for sale in Bellwood and the neighboring communities. And according to Duvetti, it's a key part of the way his office does business.
The minute a buyer enters the office, he's greeted, and then we give them the book. That is our policy. Give them the book, and that is a multiple listing book, and they select the houses themselves.
Were you given a free rein in choosing the homes you wanted to look at? I mean, did he show you, for example, the multiple listing book?
He paged through and looked at different homes in our price range or that had the 2 or 3 bedrooms and said, you know, how do you like this? I said, well, that looks okay. You know, and he went through and picked out some in that manner.
He picked out all of the houses?
Yeah. Yes.
And all of the houses he picked out for you were?
In Bellwood.
You didn't just show them certain pages of it?
No, that is not our policy. We can never do that.
And if someone says that they never saw the book?
That's a lie.
They are lying?
That's a lie.
In October of 1985, the same month during which 4 of the 6 testers we interviewed visited Rod's Realty as part of the investigation, Chandra Duvetti sold a house in Bellwood to Doris and Henry Ford. We asked the Fords if Duvetti showed them the multiple listing service directory.
No, he didn't.
What did he say he had available?
2 houses, one on 31st in Bellwood, and this one.
And nothing else available?
Nothing else.
Were you aware that you were being steered into this neighborhood?
No.
I mean, can you see it now?
Yes.
You know, had we seen more listings of houses, we would have probably got a house in another area.
The Fords realized they'd been steered only after reading about Bellwood's lawsuit against Duvetti in the newspaper. But in the 3 years since the Fords moved into Bellwood, they say they've seen the result of racial steering. 4 more of their white neighbors have moved out, and blacks have moved in. Out of 25 families on their block, only 8 white families remain. And from 1985 to 1986, Duvetti's business doubled to $4 million. How much of your business was due to the turnover in Bellwood because it was a changing neighborhood?
Less than what we had made in 85. 86, we made less money.
You made less in Bellwood in 86 than you made in 85.
That's right.
In court, you testified that in 1985, you had 27 sales in Bellwood to blacks. In 1986, you had 46 or 47. That doesn't sound like your business went down in Bellwood. It sounds like your business virtually doubled.
I think the first numbers would be somewhere.
Volume-wise, I don't know.
I'm quoting from your testimony under oath in court.
I believe.
Your business has improved doing that in 85 and 86, hasn't it? You went from 27 sales in Bellwood to blacks in 85 to 46 or 47 in 86. Is that right? Answer, yes.
I'm not sure about it. I have to get to my...
You testified in court under oath. How can you not be sure about it? You didn't say, I'm not sure about it. You said yes.
Did I say?
You want to see it? You said yes. Answer, yes.
Maybe number-wise, but volume-wise it was less. Volume-wise. Yeah. Let's say you sell 100 homes worth 50,000. So, and you sell 10 homes worth 500,000. So you really, care about the volume. You get your
So
volume.
in an area of Bellwood, which doesn't have big, expensive homes, you almost doubled the number of homes you sold and made less money?
Maybe.
Maybe. The jury found in favor of Bellwood and ordered Duvetti to pay $10,000 in damages to the village and $2,000 to the Leadership Council. He must also pay more than $71,000 in attorney's fees, submit detailed reports on how he handles his clients, and pay for additional tests by the Leadership Council to make sure he complies with the fair housing laws. At the conclusion of the Duvetti trial, the three other realtors charged with racial steering chose to settle out of court. They paid fines and agreed to give Bellwood reports on their clients as well. And Chandra Duvetti?
They are blocking my appeal. But we are going to go to the appellate court, or if need be, to the United States Supreme Court, and we are going to finally win this case.
Mortgage, Bobby's dental bill.
Just as there are headaches
And the car payment is overdue.
and headaches, there's aspirin. And there's Anacin. Clinical tests show Anacin relieves headache pain better. The Anacin aspirin formula provides a more effective level of headache relief than regular aspirin. Better relief.
Feeling better, hun?
Not just better, better.
Anacin, not just better, better.
It's beautiful. Is it fast?
Very quick. As a matter of fact, the guy didn't know what to think. When Mulholland does 4 curves.
While others describe luxury car performance with words like terminal velocity and lateral G-force,
Like it's on rails.
owners of the Acura Legend Coupe tend to be a little less technical.
It's a blast.
I've never been that much of a cereal eater, or even breakfast for that matter. But then I read 2 or 3 different articles about oat bran, and I thought to myself, why would you not eat this stuff?
Medical reports have shown oat bran can be important to your good health. Kellogg's Common Sense Oat Bran has more oat bran than any leading ready-to-eat cereal.
You know, I get up 15 minutes early just so I can do this.
New Common Sense Oat Bran. A sensible thing to do.
So there's Richie, my twin brother, taking my place at the game. I was cramming for finals, and he only had to warm the bench, like I do. No one can tell us apart.
Oh, you guys, I can always tell just by the sound of your voice.
The color in a voice. Butler. And the texture of a phrase. That's the uncompromising sound clarity of AT&T.
Butler?
We take you right there and keep you this close.
Tonight, Andy takes a look at do-it-yourselfers, and his conclusion is, we'll let him tell you himself.
There's been a great do-it-yourself movement in the United States in the past 20 years. Everything's do-it-yourself. The latest do-it-yourself is at the gas pump. They're making us pump our own gas now. More than half of all the gas sold last year was sold at a self-service pump. The first thing you have to learn if you're going to fill your own gas tank is which side your tank is on. If you pull in on the wrong side, it's hard to get the hose to reach. Not only that, you're apt to get tangled in the hose. Sometimes it's not only hard to make the hose reach from the wrong side, it's impossible.
It just doesn't reach. It's gonna reach.
A well-dressed woman doesn't want to end up with gas on her hands, smelling like a garage mechanic. About 75% of self-service customers are men. More women than men dislike pumping their own gas. Very often, something seems to go wrong. Some women are very good at it, of course. Here's one who really knows how. The gas cap is a problem. What do you do with the gas cap? Once you have it off, you have to find a place to put it. Some just hold on to it. Some drop it. Wouldn't you know they'd make it harder now we're doing it ourselves, too. With these new vapor recovery hoses, it's harder to get the nozzle down into the gas tank. It takes about 2.5 minutes to pump 15 gallons of gas, and it seems like a long wait. Customers try to get comfortable. Some are relaxed. They take it easy. They lean on their cars. They look for someplace to put their feet. People in the gas business say self-service is quicker, cheaper, and just as safe. Well, maybe. I like saving the money, but I don't like doing things myself that I don't do very well. I'm not a plumber, and I don't want to do my own plumbing. I'm not a gas station attendant, and I don't want to pump my own gas. What we need in this country is a new movement, a don't-do-it-yourself movement.
I'm Harry Reasoner. We'll be back next week with another edition of 60 Minutes.
Your report's almost ready, Bob. Another minute, Bob. Any second now, Bob.
With all the problems you face at work, your office equipment shouldn't be one of them.
Tomorrow, for sure, Bob.
Rico, we don't let your office get in the way of your business.
Many people need to cut down on salt for better health.
Instead of salt, use great-tasting Mrs. Dash with 14 natural herbs and spices. Use Mrs. Dash on every dish for zesty, savory flavor. For better health, instead of salt, try Mrs. Dash.
Is this any way to spend a weekend? Get away to Marriott's 2 for Breakfast weekend, where you can be alone, together, relax by the pool, or try our fitness room, dine and dance the night away. Through April 1st, just $59 to $89 per night, not per person, depending on location. A hearty breakfast for 2 is included. Marriott's 2 for Breakfast weekend from $59 to $89. Call 1-800-USA-WKND.
When a shark gets hungry, he looks for something he can sink his teeth into. Something meaty, something filling, something red. And when he finds it, he tears into it.
Chunky's new Easy Open can lets you tear into those delicious clams and tender potatoes in chunky New England clam chowder fast. So get plenty, because you never know. Campbell's Chunky. It takes care of the meanest appetites.
Wednesday, in the world of espionage, the surface is alive. The truth a mystery, and justice has but one champion, the equalizer. Then Ken Wall is deeper than ever.
I'm a federal agent!
A shocking episode of this season's Don't Miss Hit. Wise Guy, Wednesday.
Last week, millions of Americans lived the legend of Lonesome Dove. CBS and its affiliated stations were proud to bring you this major television event.
Later tonight, all she wanted was a little excitement. What she got was a lot more. Sharon Gless and Scott Glenn star in Outside Woman, the CBS Sunday movie 1 hour from now. But first, a new case brings Jessica to the doctor. The diagnosis? Murder, she wrote. Next.
We take a blood sample from the child who may be a kidnapped victim, and a blood sample from any of the grandparents who are looking for a child who are still alive.
For a printed transcript of this or any edition of 60 Minutes, send $3 to Transcripts, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007.